I'm a designer and a creative, and I'm a father of two dogs. If you can say that. Then I'm a traveler, and I think I'm a good chef, but for occasions. I'm a terrible routine chef, but if it's a good occasion, I can cook you a really amazing meal. The app developed from what was a pure disease management application to a disease management plus lifestyle application. We added things that were relevant for that woman and other patients as well. There was, tips for makeup, tips for how to wear a wig, where to find it, things that we could fish on YouTube that were relevant for them. Cooking, because lifestyle and breast cancer and all the medicine requires you to have a really healthy lifestyle, to eat really well. So
mother's best advice.
Oh my God. You're always falling for the wrong person.
Hello, fellows. Welcome to the next episode of Jagged with Jasravee, conversations at the edge with thought leaders from the marketing, branding, and the business world. Conversations that ignite new ideas with rough and sharp edges. Hi, Luis. Thrilled to have you on my show.
Hi there. Thanks very much for inviting me.
Okay, Luis, if we requested you to tweet your profile, what would you say?
Okay, I'm not too much on Twitter lately, but if I had to tweet myself, I would say that, I'm a designer and a creative, and I'm a father of two dogs, if you can say that. Then I'm a traveler, and I think I'm a good chef, but for occasions. I'm a terrible routine chef, but if it's a good occasion, I can cook you a really amazing meal.
Okay. I love this distinction, huh? Occasional celebratory chef.
Exactly.
Expectation management. Okay, Luis. So since design and creativity has been at the heart of what you do, could you share with our audiences what is design thinking?
If I wanted to define it, what design thinking is, and from also my experience for all these years working with this process in design and in creative industry, it's really a multidisciplinary team coming together. And they come together to understand the users, the consumers. In my case, now working in the pharmaceutical industry with Dr. Reddy's Laboratories, to understand the patients, and then to develop for them a solution that makes sense to them. When you do that, and when you sort of use design thinking, you look at the process, a process, methods, and tools within that design thinking framework that is quite similar. Sometimes you could compare with the scientific process. While the scientific process uses hypotheses, we use insights or HMWs, how made we sentences, to understand really what is the need or the unmet need of that patient or that user or that consumer. And then sort of ideate and create things that will resolve their problems or resolve their pain points. Design thinking in innovation is this part of the sort of trilogy, or you want to call it, between technology, business, and design, right? And it brings it to the three worlds together to create innovation. And many times it's really about inspiring the business side of things, the tech side of things, to design new solutions or to design things that are not there yet. Another aspect of design thinking, it's really the fact that it's human-centered. And I think this is something that, has been sort of heard many times I guess, and a lot of industries and a lot of people are trying to do more and more human-centered experiences or human-centered products or human-centered services. And one thing is certain: you can't do it without this process. This is the process by excellence that allows you to be human-centered. And when we talk about human-centered, we talk about really putting the person, the human, at center, of what you want to do, right? Other things within this definition, for example, is how you transform businesses. For example, transforming a business from the assumption that the business create into tangible and valuable products that are credible as well for your end user. I think this is important within the business world to understand that this process helps you do that, helps you transform from something that's an assumption that could be more abstract. And I could give an example, like, a business could come and say, well, I want to grow next financial year 40%. And I want to do that because I'm going to increase my production, reduce my price, right? But, it's an abstraction, is sort of an assumption, by doing this and this, I'm going to achieve the results I want, that is increase 40% of my business revenue. But, did anyone go and asked the consumers of those products or the consumers of those services that they would pay less for the service? Is that what you're really looking for? And that's where design thinking comes and plays a huge role to sort of demystify that assumption and go into sort of things that are more tangible and valuable and also credible for that end consumer. Right? I think there's tons of other things that could elaborate more without going into detail. In a philosophical level, if you look at design thinking, you're looking empathy and inspiration, right? And so, how do you empathize with the person that uses, that consumes, or that experience your brand, your product, your service, and also how to inspire them, But we got to be careful when we talk in these terms, because what happens sometimes is when we do use empathy a lot in our process, it's not just about empathy, and it's not just about empathizing, because I could go on and say, well, I empathize towards my users or I empathize towards my employees, but I don't actually apply the process. Therefore, that doesn't mean you're really doing design thinking, that you're really understanding it. It means that you might have that mindset of empathy, but it doesn't mean that you're really actually doing design thinking and applying it, right? And at the end of the day, I would say that is a combination of really a lot of different disciplines and approach coming together, especially around practices of anthropology, sociology, psychology, creativity, and strategic thinking, brought together to really understand whatever that a business wants to do, whatever innovation wants to do next, how does that really answers and met needs and answers the need of a final user or a patient or a consumer, so to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Now there's so many threads that I want to take forward. I'll do it one by one. And so first of all, I think audiences would like to, when you said demystify, that's our favorite word when we are talking to experts, because design thinking is not design, and it's not just for designers. That itself, is something people would have heard. It is for innovation, it is for this, it is for that. People have heard. But why is it that today is that time when it is so much in demand, or that orientation is being appreciated, even by qualitative researchers? They want to use it. Like you said, businesses want to use it. So, the crux of the what you said about focus on the human experience of a product or a service or an interface. Is that the reason why this is becoming important? Why is design thinking so important today? And how it is not just for designers, which you have touched upon. And when you talked about that triangle, Louis, human and business and technology, like the feasibility and what's possible and what's the experience we want. I mean, that's very profound. So could you touch a little bit here and go deeper about dispelling the misconceptions?
Sure. Great couple of questions there. Let's start with demystifying sort of a little bit what it is and what it is not. And I think what it is not is also important to be said, right? And you kind of already flourished there. It is definitely not something just for designers. Mm-hmm. It's also not just for business or not just for technology. Mm-hmm. I think it's important to highlight that too. It is becoming a very spoken process for sure in the last, let's say, 3-4 years, right? Before it was applied, it was existent, but in the last 4 to 3 years, people have been talking a lot about design thinking, and so trying to apply into business, trying to apply into technology more and more. And it's important to also say that it's not just from one or another. It's really this triangulation of what is needed to do, of this multidisciplinarity that needs to come together to be able to deliver this process and to be able to deliver what you want at the end of it as a sort of a positive and sort of a valuable result. It's also not a mindset. Mm-hmm. I think I love to say this, and I say this quite a lot, and sometimes people get a little bit upset with me when I say that. But it's not just a mindset, because a mindset is something that it's a predisposition to do something, right? And I do that because I have the mindset to do it. But it's more than that. It's a whole discipline. It's a whole process, a whole set of tools and methods that you need to apply to achieve that, right? And it is for everyone, but it's not by everyone. And what I mean here is that we can use it, but how to use it and how to apply it, it requires the expertise of an expert within the design thinking to actually, put into practice within that multidisciplinary team or that business unit or that technology unit or that marketing unit to help you really navigate the whole process and have it, being really successful. I think if I wanted to say why is it so important today, I really need to look into what's happening in the market and what's happening even during COVID. That kind of accelerated us to digitalize a lot of processes and digitalize all the way you work and the way you actually even live your life. I mean, right now we're chatting. I am at my home and you're at your home, and we're using a video call platform. Something that people will not think about using so frequently before COVID, and now everything is done this way, right? So the transformation, the acceleration of the IoT services and the digital products in the market, in our life, is so quickly and exponentially grown that people needed to start understanding, what was the effects on it in the way we work, the way we live, the way we conduct our businesses. And for that, the application of design thinking is the way to get to understand that and to make, that journey or to make that experience, a much more delightful experience, a much more, credible and sort of personalized, so to say. This is another term we could elaborate, more personalized to me. What I mean by that is that, and I believe that everything you put out there and is out there is an experience, be it a service, a product. When I talk about products, it could be physical or digital, right? Everything is really has an experience attached to it. And why is there an experience attached to it? Because there's a human being behind. And humans are built on experiences. They'll build on stories and experience that they create, they narrate alone, together with other people, closed circle people, large groups of people, etc. Right? And because it's a narration, and because it's a story, and because it's an experience, it needs to be addressed. What are the real, the real needs and the real desires of that person, to have that delightful experience. And I love you mentioned qualitative research, because qualitative research and insights it's really a crucial part of one of the phases of design thinking. And it's sort of the other side of quant research, right? Of data analysis and data on its own, right? What is also important to demystify here is that design thinking is not also just qualitative research and insights. It's important to understand that, especially in the business world. If a business unit comes to you and says, "Oh, can you run some research and give me some insights, and therefore apply design thinking?" No, you have applied the first phase of design thinking. You have not applied the process. And that phase is the most important, or one of the most important for sure, because it's where you're really going to understand what is your patient or your user experience. What are they feeling? What are their pain points? What are the things that they say? What are the things that they don't say? And we observe, right? And through that, then I can get you sort of more insightful ways of developing opportunities and creating opportunities that will sort of respond to what those unmet needs are. So that's extremely important. But it's also important to understand that that qualitative aspect and research angle, those insights angle, is only one phase of the whole phase of the design thinking process. I don't know if I answered your question.
Oh, yes. And we are going to take a lot of stuff forward also. So, Louis, when you said it is not a mindset, and so that is something we will take forward. And we will get into the best practices and some parts of the process, because you're saying, like you beautifully said, that it is not just research and insights, which it is one part of it. Now, when I'm talking to people, they have this one, because the word prototype is, kind of familiar in the design thinking discussions. So they're like, okay, if it's a product, if it's a product prototype testing kind of, because that's what design is, right? You're figuring out which kind of product is going to meet the needs of the target consumer, which will be most amenable to habit change and compatible with their current lifestyle. You might just, make prototypes and put in, do a placement in consumer's life. And at the end of a week, you can do a diary practice and you can figure out, which of these works, doesn't work. So that's one end of the spectrum, right? The other end of the spectrum is when you said that empathy and understanding of human experience is not going to be enough, because you might have the understanding, but you're not applying it. And now here, as we were talking earlier, it's a huge hospital chain has done research to understand the consumer experience across the, hospital journey, the patient caregiver journey. And there are so many emotions, which when we are sharing with the client, they understand, but they're not realizing that nothing is being done about it. For example, how much hand holding? There's a critical surgery that's supposed to happen. Why is there so much anxiety? Can we do something about it? Why is the patient, the fact that the patient is going to feel helpless, this is the power equation of a patient and a hospital, because it's an overwhelming, machinery that they witness and they don't comprehend. And there is a sufficient amount of risk to life, to money, and there is trauma, there is history, and lack of trust and commercialized, and so many aspects in the background going on, and every interface, and it's a huge relationship, like 5 months, 6 months, and then there's a post care, and there's a pre-checkup, huge relationship and huge opportunity. And yet, nothing is being done to incorporate, and perhaps little things can be done at every stage, So that is one end where there is a whole lot of data, there's a whole lot of understanding. Yet, those little things are not being done, or big things, I don't know. And the other end of the spectrum is that, okay, we did a prototype testing and we'll figure out of these 4 or 5 which works, right? So how none of this is design thinking, although both are supposed to lead to design. Could you share with us some best practices that ensure innovation, and which is critical to making a process being termed a design thinking process?
Love it. I really love to hear you out on that. I think it's a great example, and it's really so healthcare, and as you know, today is being sort of really a hot topic, and post COVID or during COVID, because it's still not post. And since I've been working now in the healthcare pharmaceutical space for the last almost 3 years now. It's been really rewarding to really understand everything that's going on, and how much design thinking and how much the work we do. And I have to mention my Studio 5B at Dr. Reddy's Laboratories. The work we do, how valuable it is for our organization and for the patients, and in the healthcare domain. It's exactly what you said. It is the healthcare system and the patient journey many times, and most of the time, broken. And let me it sounds very dramatic what I said, but you have to also count that I'm from a Mediterranean country, so we're quite dramatic in the way we speak. So
I love that.
So I will elaborate. The patient journeys are mostly broken exactly for what you said. So the design thinking process is not applied in the whole extension of it. We use a little bit of it here, and then we don't go on with the rest. Or we lose a bit of it there, prototyping you're saying, and we'll try and figure it out. If it works or if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And that's exactly the problem. This is most of the problems that you face when you try to actually design those experiences, or design those engineering products, or design those interfaces, or design that journey, if you don't look at it as a whole interconnected system, right? If you don't, and you want to tackle point by point without having an overview and a full understanding of what the patient is going through that journey, you will end up by creating little broken pocket systems that actually, in the long term, they're going to damage much more your healthcare system and your patient journey system, right? That's exactly what the problem is, right? And we while we work, go through a lot of those discussions internally. And when we study patients and we study their patient in their journey, towards a better health, towards recovering from a disease or from any problem that they're going through, we really need to address every single stage of that journey and look at it as two things. One is, the patient is basically, managing a disease. So there is this managing level of, administrating the pills. If the patient, she has to take some pills, or she has to do some physiotherapy, or if she has to go to the doctor X amount of days a week, right? So that's managing, right? So there's sort of a disease managing aspect of the patient journey. But besides that disease managing aspect, there is a whole lot of other things that happen with the patient at a psychology level, at an emotional level, at a social level, right? And you need to look into all of those, because if you don't, the only thing you're providing to the patient is little pockets of administrating the medicine, going to your doctor, and I don't know, some things here and there, right? And you're forgetting that as a human, that's a human being with a baggage of emotions that probably, apart from going through that disease, psychologically got really affected as well by what she's going through, right? And other things that we call maybe more delightful or value-added experience can be added within that patient journey. For that journey to be lighter, to be sort of more comfortable, to be, if it's not perfect, because it's never going to be, but at least to be sort of more reassuring, more trustworthy to that patient to embark on it, right? I could give you an example as well, of how we looked at that, and because you mentioned best practices, and I think it's always good to give like a real example of how we do this. So one of the great examples we have, and is a product we have in the market now, Dr. Reddy is in South America. It started in Colombia, now is in Brazil, is within the oncology space, right? So we looked at different type of cancers. We went into Colombia. We went and did the exhaustive research, qualitative research into the Colombian market to understand what the patients go through, through the journey, to good health, through the journey to sort of cure the disease, the cancer, or sort of and the different stages. We also got stages of chemotherapy, etc. We did that in Colombia and we did that in Brazil. We noticed that we look at South America as the whole thing being the same, but it's not. It's a big mistake, and it's where you go back into these aspects of context, sociology that are extremely important in aspects of psychology, behavior in patients. The two countries, the two cultures are very different. And even the healthcare system in the two countries is very different, right? Adding to all of that, when we started the project, we looked into a pure disease management application. So the idea was we have a patient goes through all these steps to get cured from the cancer. And you can pick, we study quite a few different ones, but you could pick one of them. And the idea was that we created an app to help that, management, the management of that disease, right? And a lot of things were there that were very important. When you should take your pills, when you should visit your doctor, and the idea behind of that app as well is that anything that you do, you record it, and everything that you do gets also recorded. Gets shared with your caregiver, and gets shared with the doctor, gets shared with your nurse, gets shared with the people that interact with that application with you. So everyone is informed of what's going on. So we did that. We released our pilot. We put it out in the market. We tested out, and we went to Brazil thinking about doing the same. And then we realized it's not enough. The Brazilian culture and the way the Brazilian, and I'm going to, one of the ones were sort of crucial in the decision making of the changes that we have done for that experience was, breast cancer patients. So they were women. Their experience was much beyond disease management. For them, going to doctors and knowing when to take the pills and etc. became a routine that they could remember after 4 or 6 weeks of doing it. After keep doing it, they said, we know this routine, you know what we have to do. So what? Do I going to need this product to keep telling me what to do? They wanted something else. The biggest problem for them was the lifestyle aspect of it. Losing their hair, losing appetite, how other people see them, the appearance, and the culture, the Brazilian culture is very strong on appearance, and behavior around, how do I look, how I am within my group, my social group, my social relationships. So the app developed from what was a pure disease management application to a disease management plus lifestyle application. We added things that were relevant for that woman and other patients as well. There was, tips for makeup, tips for how to wear a wig, where to find it, things that we could fish on YouTube that were relevant for them, cooking, because lifestyle and breast cancer and all the medicine requires you to have a really healthy lifestyle, to eat really well. So we look into recipes and menus that allow that person to have a better eating habits. And if you look at we looked at the eating habits of Brazil, a lot of meat, red meat, a lot of kind of heavy kind of customs of meals, and moved from that to a salad wasn't easy. So we need to look into also that experience. And then there was all this emotional aspect. How do I feel? Who can I talk to? Right? Because I am a woman, I have breast cancer. Who do I want to talk to? Just my doctor? Just my husband or my wife or my family? Or is there a community out there that I could talk about the problems I'm going through? When I start losing hair, when I start losing appetite, whatever those feelings that happen. So we decided to add a community aspect to that application, a close community of people with the same. The app developed from what was a pure disease management application to a disease management plus lifestyle application. We added things that were relevant for that woman and other patients as well. There was, tips for makeup, tips for how to wear a wig, where to find it, things that we could fish on YouTube that were relevant for them, cooking, because lifestyle and breast cancer and all the medicine requires you to have a really healthy lifestyle, to eat really well. So we look into recipes and menus that allow that person to have a better eating habits. And if you look at we looked at the eating habits of Brazil, a lot of meat, red meat, a lot of kind of heavy kind of customs of meals, and moved from that to a salad wasn't easy. So we need to look into also that experience. And then there was all this emotional aspect. How do I feel? Who can I talk to? Right? Because I am a woman, I have breast cancer. Who do I want to talk to? Just my doctor? Just my husband or my wife or my family? Or is there a community out there that I could talk about the problems I'm going through? When I start losing hair, when I start losing appetite, whatever those feelings that happen. So we decided to add a community aspect to that application, a close community of people with the same disease, with the same problem, right? Where they could communicate, directly or as a group between each other. Even they could set up some small group meetings. If they live in the same city, in the same neighborhood, they could come together and meet. So it was transformational, not just for the actual business purpose. It was the main goal from that business at the beginning, and what it became with the new geography. But it was also transformational for us as a studio to see, how really going deep into the process, and if you want, we can go through how the process goes. But if you go deep into that process, how many insights, right? How many things you can reveal that quant data or, numbers into an Excel cannot do, right? They cannot do this. This is what I think, design thinking is so beautiful and brilliant about, revealing and inspiring, much beyond what we thought at the beginning would be, the perfect result for our patient.
Lovely, isn't that? It's just, inspiring is the word, because clearly, as you were explaining, Louis, one could see that woman who would have been looked at just as a patient, today she's an acknowledged human being, as her gender included, her social setting included, her roles included, her status, community, support, everything included. It's like a whole, help system, like an ecosystem developed just so she can rehabilitate herself and feel, come out empowered. I mean, empowered is a word we marketers use a lot, but this is true empowerment, because she's not dependent on anyone, and she herself can be an asset in her life and to so many more people. So this is so beautiful. And you were talking about so the multidisciplinary aspect. I think our audiences will be able to appreciate after this, and I request you to get into how the inciting is better when there's a multidisciplinary approach, or not just in perhaps the inciting, but taking into account the biases, the assumptions, as you move from one culture to the other. But also there's a very beautiful thing about prototype to get your thinking real and test it, and what are the advantages of that, because a lot of times the ideation stays at a concept level. The importance of getting it real and putting it in consumers' life and then figuring out, because that is one of the core aspects of the process, in my limited understanding.
No,
and
absolutely.
and the other aspect of convergent, divergent thinking from at an initial stage, that you are not, you've not closed or made up your mind about what kind of solutions we are going to move with, but we're going to take into account all possibilities, and then so these are the two things that struck me as very, very remarkable, especially when it comes to designing, because people just want to, processes just want to decide and then quickly start, implement and make it tangible and then roll out. But what is going on behind is so critical and crucial. So,
Sure. Yeah, I love the question again. I used to say internally, we kind of have a laugh a little bit about this. I used to say from desk to market. What I mean by that is a lot of the times the business create a desk presentation or desktop presentation. I talk a physical desk, but actually what I mean is desktop or laptop. And then from there, here we go. We let's go to the market and let's make it work. Huge mistake, right? Most probably it will fail because we were surrounded by assumptions and by biases of our own understanding, of our own experience of what this product is going to be doing in the market, what this service is going to be in the market, what this, and I think, this is where you need to stop and bring the design thinking on board if you don't want to fail. And so we usually laugh about this, going from desk to market. There is, from before I go to the market, there is tons of other steps in between. Between those steps are exactly to do what you said. That is to take this bias away from the equation and all your assumptions to make them tangible, to make them realistic. Are they assumptions that are real, or are they assumptions that are just something that from my experience, I foresee that way, but it doesn't mean that it's that way, right? And that's when the human center, the real patient, the real user, the real consumer, whatever you want to call there, because people call it different in different industries, needs to play a role. And so design thinking is a process and not a mindset, because it has all these different stages that you need to go through. Those stages have methods and tools. Some of them you mentioned, and I'm going to repeat them, to help us achieve a no failing when you go into deployment in the market. The stages are simple, and I'll explain a little bit about the stages and elaborate on those points in the stages that you like. One is empathy, or empathize, right? And that's the stage that we already discussed. I'll refer all of them and then I'll go one by one. Empathy. The second one is define, and I'll talk about that. The third one is ideate. Yeah. The fourth one is prototyping, and you mentioned prototyping, and I'm going to spend time with that. The fifth is testing. Okay. And finally, the sixth is almost like, I'm not saying not important, but is sort of not so important within the design thinking process, is to deploy, is to say, now you're ready to go to market with it. Okay. It's there too, but it's not part of the other five. The reason why is it sort of thought that way is because it's an iterative process. And if you deploy, you can't iterate it anymore, right? It's in the market, it's there. But between empathy, define, ideate, prototyping, test, you are usually iterating, meaning that when I come up with an idea and prototype it, I test if it doesn't work, I'll prototype it again. Or then I'll go back to the ideation board to kind of refine that idea because it's not working through the testing I've done. So therefore, this importance of thinking about it as a constantly going back and forth as a process. So what each stage it has? Well, empathy we discuss a lot and extensively, but it has a lot of different medicine techniques from psychology, sociology, anthropology. For example, ethnography as well, but we may argue that falls in anthropology. Interviewing, shadowing, diaries, observations, like real observing what a patient or a user is doing. And this is so important, observations, because you need to, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but whatever many times a person say in an interview ends up by not being what the person is actually doing. And this is super important. That's why psychology, the discipline and the multidisciplinarity, it's so important here. For example, to have a psychologist, especially if you're doing work within an oncology space like we did at Alivios, to have a psychology here to see that, okay, the person may have told me all this stuff, but if I observe what the person is doing, I discover something else, or I discover something that contradicts what she said, right? This is a very important stage. We can judge. You can't jump into conclusions. You cannot say that here you know everything. It's not that stage. It's really the stage of discovering, of letting all this world that you are discovering coming into you and start thinking about it. The defined stage is when you start sort of putting all this massive amount of data you have that sometimes is 20, 30, 60 interviews, 40 observations, 5 shadowings, 10 diaries. Imagine putting all this together and start almost like funnel it into defining something that is, for example, objectives, right? What are the objectives that we're trying to resolve here? What is the decisions we need to make? How may we solve for this? How may we solve for that, right? The challenges, look at challenges that we're going to face, right? Or those people are facing, right? And how do we resolve for those challenges? Look at the pain points of a patient, right? So that's when you start defining all of this, it gets much more structure. It's like a structure of the data that you collected in the phase before. When you got all of that, you kind of have a solid, let's say, if this was a house, you got a solid foundation to go ahead into the next stage, that is ideating. Now here is what you're saying, this process of divergent. As diverge means like come up with as many more ideas as you can around all the things that you looked at before, the challenges, the pain points, the roles and objectives of each patient or persona, if you define it as a persona, and then you come together and start coming up with all these ideas. Here is super important to really not judge, not criticize. It's really idea generating. The more, the merrier. Okay? Then you share those ideas. You create workshops, you create small groups, and those groups, as we mentioned before, need to be these multidisciplinary groups. We should have a person, if you work in a sector of healthcare, someone with psychology background, someone with design background, someone with research, anthropology, or ethnographic background, someone from the business background, probably someone from the marketing background, and you name it, probably a medical, a person, a doctor that works. So it's a really multidisciplinary team that comes together to ideate, to workshop all these ideas. The end of this stage, it should converge. So we went from diverge to converge, saying that we're going to start prioritizing what we think from our understanding and what we heard from the patients that is the most important of these ideas to take ahead. We're going to use process like yes and, what else more, and so on, right? Pause that. We need to go into mock up something, because an idea is nothing if it's not tangible. We need to go into tangibility, and that comes the prototyping stage. We can create mock-ups if it's a product, a packaging, an app, a wearable. We can create storyboards, so we narrate the service. We can create a map of that service. So if it's an omni-channel service, the different touch points that are required for us to address, like you explained before, the journey of a patient in a hospital. We need to kind of use this moment of prototyping to really fail very quick. What I mean by that is that it's used, prototyping, not to create the most beautiful product or the most beautiful experience, is to create the most quick and dirty experience that you can fail or test immediately to know if it works or not, right? And then we go into testing, right? To really understand whether it works or not, that prototype, we test it with real users. It's extremely important that happens. We look at what it works, what it does not work in that prototype. We keep iterating until we get the right one. And that's where we come into between this, prototyping, testing, ideating, prototyping, testing, ideating, until we get the final thing that the user and the consumer wants.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Because, there is a reason why design thinking is becoming so important to, although it's not a mindset, it's not an orientation, but, it's because there are certain values hidden in the whole process. It is a lot of humility that, you fail quickly, like you said, and go back, listen again. Did we do it right? Let's do it again. Till we get it right. And let's make it.
What you said.
No?
I love that because when you talk about humility, I think it is extremely important that you bring that up. A designer that is so attached to her design and is unable to let go, it will not be doing design thinking. Therefore, when you mentioned before, design thinking is not just for designers. The same thing with a business or a marketeer. If I'm too attached to my goal or to my assumption or my idea that what's going to be good, and I can't let go, you're not applying design thinking. And therefore, being a designer or marketeer or a business leader, you may end up by failing because you're not listening. You're not applying the system, the design thinking process, and you're not listening to the user, to the patient. Wow. Don't kill me.
Mother's best advice.
Oh my God. You're always falling for the wrong person. Apparently.
Okay. Mothers. Okay. Alternate profession could have been.
Oh, yeah. Film director.
What would you do on Mars for fun?
Oh, yeah. Well, if there were no radioactivity, I'll run around naked.
Okay, why not? What would you tell your 18-year-old self?
Hmm. Keep partying.
Okay, book you'd like to gift to all your friends.
Yeah. So maybe there's quite a few. The latest one I read, and I think it's a really good book that I advise to a lot of people, is called the Cultural Map. I think is Erin. I forgot their name. So just the Culture Map. If you Google that, you'll
Okay,
find it, and it's really
okay,
fantastic book.
sure. If you had to devote the rest of your life to philanthropy, what cause would you choose?
I think I'll choose, the HIV in children, and I think I'll dedicate my time to help these people.
Okay, your greatest joy.
My greatest joy, uh, I think, my greatest joy is to see, everyone around me happy, and fulfilled and less worried, and
Okay.
yeah.
How would you like strangers to remember you?
Hmm. Well, I think I like them to remember my smile, and then that I somehow I could help them in one form or another.
Okay. What's a lesson that took you a long time, that you took a long time to learn? Okay.
I love it.
You're already laughing. Have you already said it? I don't think so, right?
No, I didn't. I just think in my head. Oof. Well, I think it took really long time to know how to save money. Probably
Okay.
one of them. Yeah.
Okay. What is one missed opportunity that you wish you could have a second chance at?
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know about that, but I think there's always. Okay, I cannot elaborate. So a missed opportunity that at some point I remember in the past, very long, some time ago, when I was studying and I did a degree in architecture, I had this huge opportunity to go to California into the Institute of Advanced Institute of Architecture.
Hmm.
I got into that school. It's one of the most amazing schools in the world, and I really wanted to go there until they told me how much it costed. I got a scholarship, but the scholarship wouldn't cover everything, and unfortunately, because it was relatively expensive for what I could afford, I didn't go there. And that if now I had what I have now, if I would have a kid that I could provide that, I'll definitely will go there again. I'll try to go there. Yeah.
Okay. 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 Now it's wrap up time, Louis. At this point, we'll request you to share any online addresses, anything that you'd like to share with our audiences so they can reach out to you. Where and how should they do that?
Okay. I mean, you can reach out to me through email. So you can directly reach out to my work email, that louis@drreddy.com. You can also look into the work we're doing and reach out us through the website. Our website is studio-5b.com. That is our design thinking and design studio for Dr. Reddy's. Otherwise, I have a Twitter account I almost never use, but I think those two will be a good start, and then we will see.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll put it in the show notes also.
Yes, I think this is a great initiative, and I'm really pleased and honored to be invited. And I think it's good to be able to have a platform where you can really share this sort of more edgy topics. Sometimes they're not spoken, or they're sort of like they remain a bit forgotten. And I think that you brought back this design thinking is it's really important to keep reiterating what it is and how it is applied and how it is done. And and I think you definitely should subscribe and should listen to the podcast, not so much to mine, but definitely to all the other ones.
Okay.